What's going on, folks? My name is Matthew, aka EZBOT, and we're back with another live stream. Today we're going to discuss two different types of workflows, even though I'd say that there are three distinct standard workflows, but we're just going to talk about two of them. We're going to talk about the semi-improv workflow versus the fully improv workflow, and the third one would be song mode, which is its own workflow unto itself. And when I say workflow, I mean writing for live performance type workflow. And I think that there are multiple different ways to write music in hardware electronic music. And sometimes you write for performances, and sometimes you write on the machines and you record into your computer. And sometimes you just write on the machines and you just want to write songs on there and then record those when they're done. So the second one was write on the machine and then record as you're writing it into the machine. Like, just use the synthesizer or drum machine as a sound source in your DAW. Is what I meant by that. So the workflow that I like to use is this semi-improv workflow. The workflow that I see a lot of people using, especially for techno production, and which is something that I like to do a lot. And I do live techno all the time with my semi-improv workflow. And I'll explain what I mean by semi-improv versus global here in a second. But I see a lot of the global mute type workflow and the pattern mute type workflow, and they are the two distinct, like, I don't know. If you're using one or the other, it kind of it's a tell of which workflow that you prefer. So if you use the pattern mute workflow on the Elektron boxes, let's switch over to this cam so I can tell you what I'm talking about. So we have two different types of mute modes in the Elektron workflow, and this is like other machines have similar action that you can do, or just have song mode versus global mute mode. But Elektron offers you a pattern mute and a global mute mode. It's really cool. It's extremely flexible. The M8 kind of has its own workflow where it has a live workflow where you can like queue up little moments in time. This is one of my main pieces for live performance. And you can queue up little phrases and then move and mix and match phrases. And that's kind of as close as you're going to get to like the pattern mute workflow on the M8 it's more of the arranger song mode workflow, or the global mute workflow, I guess would be a better way of putting it. Don't mean to confuse you. I'm saying pattern, global, and mute quite a bit right now, but I'm going to make it very clear in just a moment. So this here is a pattern mute. In the Elektron workflow, the pattern mutes are assigned to your patterns, which is really cool. That means that when I go from pattern 13 to pattern 14, well, let's take some of these mutes out. Pattern 14 to pattern 13, you can see the mute states have changed. Now, in global mute mode, when you move from one pattern to another, doesn't matter what pattern, they stay the same across all banks and all patterns. This is extremely useful. Both of these workflows, both of these mute modes are extremely useful, but you don't blend them together. That's not something that is very common. I've never seen it, honestly. I don't really see people blending the mute modes together because they're conflicting. They're very conflicting. So when you have this workflow with the global mute mode, which I'd say is the most common by default, and that's because the units ship with global mute mode. In demo mode, they're in global mute mode. You go into a store, they're likely in global mute mode to try the machine out. And I worked in a synth shop for years. I tell you, it was usually in global mute mode because it's the easiest to understand when you first get in contact with these boxes. And the kind of workflow that you do in this mode gives you an expectation that when you take, say, your kick out of a pattern and you go to your next pattern, that your kick will still be out of the pattern. Even though your next pattern has all new sound sources, you knew that your kick would be out of the pattern. It's not because you had some predetermined thing written into your music that the kick would be removed from your pattern. You knew because you muted it beforehand. And this has a very powerful effect on how you write your music and how you perform live. Now, in the techno workflow, this is very good because this means that you're very open to improv. This is like by far the most flexible workflow in terms of improv. And I'd say improv really lends itself to techno production more than any other live performance type electronic music. This is the best way I could put it. The global mute mode really lends itself to that because it gives you the most flexibility. You have this very basic and almost, I don't know, what was I going to say? I was going to say like Neanderthal understanding of it. Just like, it's mute, no sound. Okay. You know, it's just like, it's so basic. You don't have to think very hard about it at all. It's just going to do exactly as you expect. Now with the pattern mute mode, the expectation of your music is that when you go to the next pattern, it's going to hit a predetermined feeling, a predetermined precipice. If I go from pattern 1 to pattern 2, I expect that at pattern 2, the kick, the snare, a particular lead line, and maybe all of the crash cymbals or whatever, just certain elements of the music, they're not going to be there, and or they're going to be there. This is an expectation I could have from going from two tracks unmuted to every track unmuted without me having to press literally 14 buttons to do that in the global mute mode. So this is kind of the in-between method, this pattern mute mode versus the global mute mode for like the in-between mode between like doing song mode. So like this is like got a little bit of a song mode-ish to it because there's an expectation when you go from one pattern to the next. And in this mode, there's not really any song mode stuff to it. It's at the lowest form of what you would consider a song mode. You are 100% the song mode when you do the global mute mode. And this is really important distinction and an important distinction for your workflow. Now, something that I want to discuss as well, and what I think is super important for people coming from like guitar player realm, and it's very common. I've been teaching private lessons on Elektron music gear and other instruments, but mostly Elektron for years. And I've been doing it regularly for, I mean, I do several sessions every single week. And I've been doing this for years. It's wild to me that I do this, but let me share some of the information that I've learned in this process. I've met so many musicians from all over the place, and so many of them fall into the same category. I'd say like 70% of people that I work with are guitar players who found themselves in their house with new music gear. And it wasn't a new guitar and a new amplifier. It was hardware electronic music. In fact, I'd say a lot of them never had the expectation they would ever get into hardware electronic music. These people, very often, and more often than a lot of other music producers, maybe 70% was a little heavy-handed. Let me go 60-40 with that, because I'd say I work with a lot of people that are just into switching to hardware from the DAW. But these folks have this expectation of this very melodic, song-produced workflow. And my recommendation to them is always start with the pattern mute workflow. And if you want to get into improv techno, if that's your goal, then let's talk about the global mute workflow. And then if you really need things to be on rails, if you are playing shows with other guitar players, or you're going to just introduce this instrument to your band as a guitar player or something like that, then let's talk about the arranger and talk about the pitfalls and the advantages of having the arranger, because the arranger is a really great thing to do. One thing to note, just very quickly, if you do want to do the arranger workflow and you want to use like these two machines together, you will have to write identical arrangements in your arranger on both machines, and then make one of them a master. But you can't write one song mode in one machine in the Elektron workflow and have that control and have everything work together like that. You just have to write identical arrangements, and then the arrangers will work together because the sync start will make it so it all functions. It's honestly not a big deal. It's just a couple of numbers. It'll take you an extra couple seconds to program what you did here. Not a problem at all. So don't worry about it. It totally works. But it is something you have to keep in mind. It is something that's extremely important to know if you're going to get into this production workflow. So the reason why these particular folks, they're me, they're clones of myself. I'm just them in the future is kind of like the analogy that I give them. The people that I work with, that is that if you're going to be doing this like really melodic content and stuff like that, it's really hard I mean, it's super hard, especially on these boxes. And when you're, let's switch back over to this camera, especially when your perspective as a musician is buttons and knobs. I can't believe I didn't clean these off before I started. Is like your keyboard on the Digitone. This is not a keyboard for like a piano player is not going to sit down at the Digitone and go like, all right, yeah, I'm grooving on here. Like, let's play a bunch of cool jazzy chords. You're not going to do it. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. It's not even something fun to try. This is great for programming notes when you're in step edit or for just getting an idea of a couple of chords during live record mode. This doesn't have velocity. It's not expressive in any way. It's extremely condensed. It's not comfortable or convenient in any way to live play on here, other than a couple of notes. I mean, I live play with my Digitone, but what I mean is like your expression with a MIDI keyboard is going to completely, destroy your experience of plugging notes in on your Digitone. And this is leading to me saying that the more melodic content, the more melodic expression you're doing in your music production, the more you're going to rely on arranger mode, and the more you're going to rely on pattern mute mode, and less you're going to rely on the global mute mode. And that's because for you to improv on these boxes in a melodic fashion, you have to program some really, really specific sounds to have everything be able to layer on top of each other. And how are you going to improv it? You're going to have to get some external devices to control these boxes so that you can program with a keyboard, most likely. And you're going to have to be very proficient with your playing, for one. And if you're just new to hardware electronic music, like that might not be where you're at yet exactly. Programming might be one thing, and there's all sorts of tools to help you with your programming in these boxes. But playing live with very, very melodic stuff, if you're going to be doing leads and all that kind of thing, kind of requires you to have already learned how to do that beforehand, before you get into these machines, and you to have an understanding of how you're going to do that with music theory and all of that kind of thing. So I'm just pointing that out, that there's just a fact of the matter is you have to already have your chops to do that workflow in these machines. It's not something you just get to be like, I want to do this melodic improv workflow on these machines. You don't get to skip over all of the practice that you have to do, that every other musician has to do to get to that spot, because the machines, they don't hold your hand that well. So I just keep that in mind when you're picking up these boxes and what you want to do with them. That being said, if you're going to be doing something that's a little bit more atonal, a little bit more on rails, and you want to do something, you can do all sorts of melodies. There's no reason you can't have melodies in your music while you're improving in hardware electronic music at all. That's not what I'm getting at. There's tons and tons of awesome workflows and tools and techniques to achieve these goals, but it's going to change the kind of music that you play, and it's going to change a little bit about how you go about writing the music, and it's going to change a bit about your performance, and you'll probably fall in love with it, like I did. I'm somebody who comes from playing guitar for 20 years. I played guitar. I studied jazz with a guitar instructor. I studied vocals. I went to college for music. All of my whole life is based around this. I was even a music counselor for a couple of years. Like, I've done music stuff forever. Doing a little bit of the improv workflow, if you hand me a guitar, I could do that, right? I could jam on that a bit. Could I do it with a keyboard? Probably not. Not well. Can I do it on here? Kind of, a bit. I'm going to do it as good as the next guy could, because it's just hard to do that kind of stuff on here. So that was a long road for me to get down to the fact that we're discussing these two workflows and why you would choose one versus the other. You might want to do the arranger workflow if you're working with a band. You might want to do the pattern mutes workflow if you're coming from a singer-songwriter's perspective, like I have, and you're integrating electronic music into your singer-songwriter brain. And then you might want to do the global mute workflow if you're really interested in doing live improv techno production, because that's the best one for that particular workflow, in my opinion, for fully, if you really want to get into that improv thing where somebody goes, hey man, can you play a set for 2 hours? And you go, well, I don't have that much music written, but I could probably play for 4 or 5 hours if you give me the opportunity. And they're like, okay, whatever. If you have the global mute workflow, if you have the improv workflow down in the Elektron realm, you can play forever. There's no DJ that could stand up to the force that is somebody who is well-versed in live improv electronic music, because it is literally endless. And you only get better and better and better during your set as the set goes on. Like, your set improves because you improve during your set. And it's not just that attrition of like, yes, I've been practicing and playing. It's literally your set gets better because during your set, your vibe gets stronger. Your connection to the music grows as you're performing, unless you're getting fatigued, of course, there's always that. But just the music always gets better. By the end of your set, it's always the best music that you had at the set, I think, from all the improv stuff I've heard at the countless hardware shows that I have been to, and I've been to a lot. So that's kind of, I wanted to set this stage before I kind of explain my in-between, where what the semi-improv workflow is. Because the semi-improv workflow takes a bit from the arranger perspective, and it takes a bit from the global improv perspective, and it mashes them together to make something that gives you like these footprints in your song or these goals in your live show where you're like, I want to get to this feeling and I know that I'm going to get there. The question is, the improv part of it is how smoothly can I get from pattern 1 to pattern 2? What's the transition look like? What am I going to be doing with the machines themselves as I'm playing? What am I going to have some external devices, or what am I going to be doing? What kind of pedals am I going to bring along? Am I going to be doing where I have multiple tracks that have the same sounds, and maybe I'm switching them out so that I have more of that global experience, more of that improv experience, which is what I'm going to share with you today, my personal workflow. And yeah, that's what I was getting at. So it's those two workflows, or the arranger workflow and the global mute workflow combined, and that creates the workflow that I do. So now let me dive a little bit deeper into how I approach this. So this is, I think, very cool. And this workflow that I want to share spawned from the Mark II, not the Mark II, the Digitone 2 and the Digitakt 2, not the Mark IIs, because they're not Mark IIs. These are fully evolved, much better devices than the Digitakt 1 and the Digitakt 2. In fact, I'd say they completely smoke both those units big time. Like, they're both awesome. I'll take a Digitakt. I still have my Digitakt 1, Digitakt 2. I don't have any reason to get rid of them. Maybe I'll have some use for them later or give them to my kid or something. But these devices, these are the best thing, in my opinion, that Elektron has made. They're still just amazing, absolutely amazing. And we're still getting updates on them, which is great. We got chopping on the Digitakt. And so, but the big thing that changed, that influenced my workflow so much, is that when the Digitakt 2 and the Digitakt and the Digitone 2, when they came out and they introduced a couple of different things, they introduced this function, which is super dope. And of course I combine it with this, and I'll explain this. I've explained this 1,000 times, but it is an important part, whether it's the Octatrack or another device that can do similar stuff to what I do with the Octatrack in your workflow. But they introduced a couple of features that make these devices completely different than working on the Digitakt 1 and the Digitone 2, or the Digitone 1. Jeez. These 1s and 2s. I'll never learn my 1s and 2s. Okay, here's the first feature that I'd say is like a game changer. Holding function while in your mute mode and queuing up your mutes. This is bananas. And in fact, if you have large hands like I do, you can actually hold function on both machines, and I do this. Maybe you've seen me do it on these streams, but I do this in a live show. I mean, I'll just give you an example of what this is like. Let's get some sounds going. Oh yeah, let's get to where I want to be. Okay, cool. All right, let's get that. Okay, this is one of my tunes, unfinished. This is something we're gonna I believe we'll work on if my conversation doesn't eat up this entire live session. Okay, so check us out. I'm gonna take this kick out. I'm gonna queue up these new elements. I'm gonna hold function. I'm gonna grab this one. I'm gonna remove these, bring this in, And then I'm gonna use my Octatrack. I'll grab like a filter. No, I'll grab a 4-bar effect. Check this out, this is cool. This effect will start at the beginning of the next 4 bars. Here's some drama. I haven't written the bass line yet, so it's a little bit dead, but we'll just bring that back in and make it a little more solid. So this is some cool stuff, right? That was a transition inside my song where I went from low energy to high energy using pattern mutes plus mute cue plus something to snag my audio, grab it, you hold it in place and create an arc, a linear transition. That's something new. That's amazing. But what's really cool, and the next big part of this workflow, I'm gonna go through a bunch of different things that are very particular to what I like to do. But the next big part of this workflow is the fact, let's bring these back in. Oh my God, I was like, wow, my brain just went, no, it's all back. Is the fact that we have 16 tracks in the machines. This completely changes things. So the first, and I've talked about this before, but we're doing the whole thing. I'm going to go through the whole gamut of everything that I do because I've got I'm continuing to refine this, and I'll talk a little bit about that process too, and how I'm infatuated with the process of refining these workflows. I love this. Like, this is as much fun for me as it is actually writing music or actually playing shows. Like going in and just like, oh, when a new piece of equipment comes out and it adds a new functionality, and then I'm like, but it has to have this, it has to have this, and it has to have this, and it fits on the desk, and it connects to this device, and oh, those do work, they're fully compatible. Oh, this does that. Oh, it is compatible with this. Okay, cool. And it's got a small footprint. I'm gonna get excited. I'm gonna be like, oh, I want to get that. I want to add it to my workflow, and I want to see how it does. And often, it bounces right off, and I just go right back to what you saw on the table today, because I'm very particular about how much gear I bring to a show, which is a whole nother topic. But I'm constantly trying to refine that. Like somebody with a modular synth, right? Do you ever see somebody's modular case just look the same all the time? It just doesn't happen very much. There's a few people who are pretty good at sticking to their case, but they're strange people to me. I don't understand what's happening in their brain. Like, there's so many new modules coming out all the time. Let's switch back over here. So what my particular workflow is, and what I really, really love about this 16 tracks, and when these new machines came out and they had all these tracks, I was like, what am I going to do with all these tracks? I don't need so many tracks. And I, in fact, thought I would just use just a Digitakt and be like, I don't need any, because there wasn't a Digitone 2 yet. But I was like, I don't need the Digitone 2 anymore. I'll just do stuff on the Digitakt. I was like, this really simplifies my life. I'll just have the one machine. And that'll be it for me. And then the Digitone 2 came out, and I was like, oh my God, there's Digitone 2. It's got all this great stuff, and it sounds amazing, and 16 voices, yada, yada, yada. So many perks, right? I added that to my workflow, and I was like, man, I am overwhelmed. I feel like I have so many pieces of equipment on the stage because I have so many tracks in these machines, and I don't even know what to do with them all. And it's way more than I'm used to having. I'm used to only having 12 because it was 8 tracks and 4 tracks, or it was a Syntakt plus Digitakt, and then it was 20, which was a lot then. And I was like, I'm not even using all those tracks. I use every track on my Digitakt every show. All 16 of these tracks are cooked at every show now. Doesn't matter, or just in my productions, whether I'm playing a show or not, just in my production in general, every track is full with these tracks. And this all has to do with the semi-improv workflow and the improv workflow. So trust me, I'm going to we're going on the same road no matter what I'm talking about right now. It all leads to the same spot. These 16 tracks, and this having 16 tracks, I don't use all the tracks in the Digitone, mind you. It's a lot of tracks for melody stuff. So I often am skipping some, and maybe I'm using more voices on one track or another, or I'm just ignoring half of the tracks, which is something I had to learn how to do. That was kind of a process just to learn how to ignore gear. You know what I mean? Or to learn how to ignore some tracks and be like, I don't need to use everything all the time. That's I don't know. It's an emotional growth experience. It's like near spiritual or something to figure that out. But on these tracks, the way that I have been writing my music, we'll leave this song. I just want to remember I'm in bank 11 or bank 3 or C or whatever you want to call it. we'll go here and I'll just jump over to this. Nope, I do like that track a lot, but we'll go here, I think. Yeah, okay. So this is just a track that's in one of my sets, and it's just more, it's more complete than other ones, so I'm jumping back over here. I've probably played this a few times during these streams. Doesn't matter. I'm just really gonna be talking and just kind of pointing things out. So the workflow that I do with these two machines and with these 16 tracks, and this is specific to having 2 rows of tracks. This is really important for this semi-improv workflow that I like to do, which keeps me pretty close to improv, but still in the semi-improv, still a little more on rails, because I like to get to these like emotional precipices, because I'm just an emo singer-songwriter guy who got into electronic music. That's who I was. That's who I am. I'm like the Radiohead dude. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to listen to. I want to get all sad and stuff all the time. But I don't always want to do that with my electronic music. Anyway, I'm just pointing out that I'm always having to fight myself to use more melodic stuff, and I'm trying to stop myself when I'm in electronic music, because I learned that it's punishing to do too much melody. It punishes you later. It makes you not like your music as much, I found. You got to be a little bit, you got to slim down that stuff and get a little more tasteful and not just keep adding and adding and adding just because it's there. Anyway, so the workflow that I like to do is I actually duplicate my sounds. So if there's a kick here, and there's a rumble here, and there's a clap here, then there's a kick here, a rumble here, and a clap here. They're alternative versions of each other. Mind you, they will work with each other. They're sounds built to work with two, so it's 2 drum kits assigned to the top and the bottom. And while I'm playing, as you can see, one would be muted while the other is not. I kind of ignore the fact, and some of them can, or I ignore one while the other plays. And I don't want them to play with each other. I don't want to have 2 kick patterns playing 2 different kicks at the same time. I mean, sure, it could maybe sound good, but it's not ideal. It's not what I want. The point is that what it gives me is the ability to do that. I'll just give a quick example of how this sounds. So I can do one of these build-ups again. Like, I could use one of these Octatrack. This is my performance template stuff, and you can pick this stuff up on my Patreon if you're interested. So let's do a little build-up. So I can cue this, or I can just go like this. Now we're kind of in this, like, we're still in the same song, but we're in a new vibe. And I can mix and match these sounds. I can take this one out and switch over to this melodic sound. This is so good with this queuing up the mutes with this particular workflow, because I just switch things out like this. Check this out. Might have been better at just the last bar. I'm still in the same pattern. So now I'm able to improv, semi-improv, mind you. That's gonna be the tagline here. I mean, I could do this stuff. I can switch in and out of these sounds if I want. And sometimes I can, have them going at the same time if I want. This is a sidechain track. So this is the idea. Same thing on my Digitone, same thing on my Digitakt. If there's a bass line here, there's a bass line here. If there's a lead line here, there's a lead line here. There's an antithesis to this lead line on this lead line. There's an antithesis to this chord on this chord track. Maybe it's not an antithesis. That kind of implies that they're like going at odds with each other. They're not. They're compatible with each other. They're friends, but they don't hang out at the same time. Okay? It's very platonic in this relationship. That's probably not the right description for it, but it works. This is the workflow for me with this semi-improv. I use pattern mutes, and I use this improv type dual kit mode. And then when I go to my next song or next pattern or whatever, sometimes there'll be multiple patterns with the same song. This particular song is only one pattern because I just improv as much as I can to try and eke out as much goodness as I possibly can on this particular track. Same thing with this, like, more melodic like housey melodic techno stuff. Semi-EDM-ish even, so I can't get away from myself. And like you can go through and kind of just like memorize a bit of what you think would work best. What particular, you know, things to mute and unmute in what order. You can kind of make it up as you go during a show. You can kind of feel it. If you know your song well enough, you can just feel it and work your way around and play with your tracks and your dual kits. The reason why I still use I wouldn't need to use the pattern mute workflow on one pattern. That wouldn't matter. Most of my songs that I write have multiple patterns. So when a song has multiple patterns, the ones I'm showing right now don't, because I've been doing a lot of improv stuff. But I'm still using my purple mutes because it's just what I'm used to. But if they have multiple patterns, then when I go to pattern 2, I expect that I'm going to be at this, like if I'm building up, I expect it to either be a big drop at the next pattern or huge energy or whatever, or this completely different rhythm change. But obviously we've moved on to the next part of the song. We have a new pattern. We have all this stuff. I expect to have certain elements removed to give me room to build back up to the precipice of that next pattern, instead of having to remember or look at a piece of paper or a spreadsheet on a laptop or an iPad or crazy notes that I've written. I don't have to think about that at all. I don't need that. I do bring notes to a show. It's the notes say, I don't have them in front of me, but the notes say what patterns to play. They don't actually say anything else. It's not like do this or do that. It says go to bank A, play patterns 2 through 7. Go to bank C, play patterns 1 through 5. Go to bank A, play pattern 1, play pattern 2. And that's it. And then it will say unplug this and plug this in. And play 4 tracks from your M8 tracker on the HyperFX template as opposed to playing on the Performance Mixer techno-styled templates on my Octatrack. And like, those are the things that's what I write on my notes. Like it says Perf Mixer, M8 tracker, MIDI. It just reminds me to do that. And so because the rest of it's already done, it's already written. So in global mute mode, you sometimes, if you have a particular idea that you want to achieve, you have to write that down or you have to memorize it. And if you're playing for a really long time, that's going to be really hard. So if you're writing music with multiple patterns in it, you have an expectation that it gets to a certain spot at a certain finale, the pattern mutes are going to be the way to go. If you're doing the global mutes with that, you're going to have to follow your notes really well, and you're going to have to really do it right on your global mutes and not screw that up, because it will cause you a lot of frustrations and it'll honestly stress you out a lot. The global mutes make it very easy. And another advantage that you have with the global mutes is that you can go into your tracks, and the camera's a little far away, and I'll probably cut this into a short edit so that we can discuss this very quickly. But if you're in the pattern mute mode, you can go into your pattern settings and you can name your pattern. Of course, this is always a good idea, whether or not you do global or pattern mute. And I haven't done it on all my patterns, so I'm saying it's a good idea, but I haven't done it. So do what I say and not what I do. You save your pattern, you name it, you save it to your project. And what will happen is that you can save it to your project in the state that you expect to have your project be when you go play your show. So every time you go to reload pattern from that menu, it'll reload back to only your kick and your like small hat in your bass and the chord stab going, and that's it. Or maybe it's just a chord stab and everything's unmuted. You can save that into your pattern state in pattern mute mode only. In global mute mode, that doesn't work. So I can practice my songs over and over and over, and all I got to do is reload. That's all I do is go reload, pattern, bam, everything refreshes back to the original state, and I can practice again and again and again until I get feeling very confident and really good at what I'm doing. And I can practice my performance effects. I can practice opening a filter cutoff or modulating something, or just going to an LFO and tweaking some stuff, finding parameters that are really useful, just practicing muting and unmuting. That's a whole skill unto itself, knowing what to mute, practice stretching my fingers across these two machines and giving them a little workout. It actually kind of feels like it could be a little painful. Been doing it too much. That's something you can do in the pattern mute mode. So that's a huge advantage. I think, to somebody who wants to play shows live, if that's your goal, is to play shows or to just perform. Like for me, this is important to me, but for me, it's not just about playing shows. Like that's kind of like, that's what we talk about on this channel a lot, is like writing hardware, electronic music for live performance. And that's probably I'd say the main focus of the EZBOT YouTube channel, is to talk about that and discuss that and work on that and hardware music production. But it's not always about performing at a show. It's about performing the music, either just for yourself, but even to record it. Perform the music and record the performance. And just to have that, or just to experience it, or just to play it for your dog. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just about the experience of you being in control of the song from the beginning to the end of the song, and you were able to take it down that road, or down this road, or down that road, but all roads lead to a very particular destination that you had an expectation that you would get there. That's the workflow that I like. I like knowing that we're gonna get to the coolest moment in the song is when I do this high pass filter with delay, and then everything drops out, and all of a sudden it's just the kick and this really crunchy bass, and I have this expectation that that's where we're going. I wanna get there smoothly. Pattern mutes really lend themselves to that. Global mutes don't. Arranger mode will do that for you too. So, but the arranger mode, really, you just tweak knobs and locks you in. Although there is this step loop, or the loop mode, that's pretty effective there. Okay, so let's get back over here to the machines. So that's why why and how I do the two things. One kit, one kit, one kit, one kit. And and I don't have them play at the same time, although some of the hats sound pretty good stacked on top of each other. Yeah, some of the other sounds do too. But for the most part, I write them to be separated from each other. Now, track 16 on all of my machines at all times with these two machines. I don't know if this is the most perfect grouping of machines for me. I would say this one, but it can't sync to my Elektron boxes in the current state, which is an absolute freaking shame. The biggest shame that this can't sync to my Elektron boxes right now. But so it's kind of just there, looking cool. This, on the other hand, does a great job, and it goes with my set. So these are what I play shows with. In fact, I used to bring a 303 with me, but post-filter overdrive on your Digitone 2 can get you into some pretty dope squelchy zones that will do a good enough job to emulate the 303 to kind of just get you to that zone that the 303 takes you to, that really mid-range resonant tasty zone. I always throw distortion on it anyway for the most part. And this can totally get you there. So I've kind of eliminated that from my live show setup. That's aside. That's a moot point. All right, let's get back over here. What am I on? Okay, so track 16 is always the same thing on both machines. Track 16 is my sidechain track. Let me get to a song where, let's get back to this song. Oops, this one. Okay. I don't have any sidechain happening on my Digitakt 2 yet, because like I said, I'm in the process of, this is a new song that I'm writing. So I'm not there yet, but I did start the sidechain process on my Digitone 2. And you've seen, I hope that you've seen my sidechain compression, sidechain ducking with the compressor workflow, and how great it is and how it lends itself to improv, and how you can just take stuff out of sidechain and add stuff to sidechain instead of parameter locking it into your sequencer, and it just completely changes the game. So, and credit where credit's due, a buddy of mine was like, why don't you just do the sidechain compression and just remove the track from the main mix? And I was like, I'm such a fool that I haven't been doing that this whole time. And of course, as soon as that thought was just like in my head, I was like, that is, of course, the answer. I don't need the compressors on these machines. I would much rather have music design as opposed to polish, actually designing my tracks and effortlessly being able to perform and control things. That's way more powerful, way more effective, and way more useful to me as a musician, as opposed to maybe just being able to compress my mix, which is something I can do either with an Octatrack or with a billion other things. You have Chase Bliss Clean, you have Poly-N Press, you have RNC, you have Analog Heat plus FX, you have TR1000, you have ToneVerk, you have another Elektron box maybe, or whatever you want to add to it that has compressors. There's a zillion stereo compressors in small formats, even one from Elektron, right? The Analog Heat plus FX that you can use as your compressor. And one of the advantages, let me say this, I'm going to point this out before I forget, because I want to impart as much knowledge as I can onto everybody as often as I possibly can during these streams, is that if you do want to have an external compressor, because this sidechain workflow that I always do on track 16 will remove your compressor from being able to be a compressor because we don't use any makeup gain, we're just ducking with it. If you were to use your Analog Heat plus FX and you were to dial in your compression, you can actually set it up in a way that you send program change per pattern or per song, however you want to put it, in your Elektron boxes to your Analog Heat plus FX, and you can create a sound profile for every single pattern that you write in your Analog Heat plus FX, so that when you go to pattern 1 to pattern 2, the compressor is dialed in for your particular sound and the particular dynamics you've created with your drums. This is really important, and the reason why it can be a little frustrating to remove your ability to have the compressor and substitute it for a sidechain ducking track is that you do lose that compressor, and it does really help to tighten up the mix, and it is a nice thing to have at the end of your chain, of course. And it's remembered into your pattern states. That's really powerful. So you lose that, and you're like, that's a real stab, right? But you get the Analog Heat plus FX made by Elektron. You know it's going to work with your Elektron stuff for sure. And, or with anything, Elektron's good at that. You get the Analog Heat plus FX, you send the program change, you can do the exact same workflow. It's the same compressor as what you'd find in your Digitakt 2 or Digitone 2. It came out at the same time, or their compressors did. And you can use that and have it memorized. But you can also add drive. You can use the analog filter as a performance effect. You can use the other effects in there or whatever you want them to be. I wouldn't use them for very much, honestly. But I would use the bass to mono, and I'd use the compressor, and I'd use the analog filter, and I would use the drive, and I would set my volume that way. So I could just set these to a default value and do the volumes there and have everything be at identical volumes, every track be identical volumes, because I have an end of chain source for that. So this was we went down another path for a second, but it was an important path, and we're gone. We're leaving that path. We're back here. So the sidechain track I use as another live performance thing, right? And I can actually remove sidechain. This is if I remove sidechain, here's how it feels to remove sidechain. This is why this is semi-improv / improv. You can do this with the fully improv global mute workflow as well. You could do it with the arranger mode too. This applies everywhere. But if I was to use sidechain ducking as in effect, so to speak, something that I can introduce, I can remove, and it's so substantially strong. But let me show you how substantially strong it feels. Sidechain is running currently. It's on the melodic side, which is where I think it's the most important. You can do sidechain on your percussive stuff too, of course. There's a really good use case for that, especially with rides and big open hats, and you can do it to your effects or reverbs and delays, all of that. It's very effective. But if I was to use, I don't know, I'll mask what I'm doing with a performance effect, just some sort of filter. Sidechain taken away. I got that rhythm still there from the clap. It's completely changed the vibe of the song, but it filled up all the space that was being taken from the sidechain, but I removed a lot, so I have room for this. And I can build back up if I want. Back into the rhythm. It's really fun to do stuff like this. Here's again, without it. Sounds good both ways, but of course, when it's there, it feels a little overwhelming compared to when it wasn't, because I wrote it to be sidechained. Groovy. Does that make sense? I think it does. And I think it's really useful. I think it's a ton of fun. Okay, so now here's another part of the semi-improv versus the global improv. How did I not bring a drink into the studio? I'm such a fool. Wish my dog could get drinks for me. Oh man, this headphone cable thing is once again plaguing me. So another thing that you can do with the global workflow versus the pattern mute workflow versus the global mute workflow, aka semi-improv versus global improv, is that in the global workflow, a lot of times a lot of people don't even use the Elektron sequencer at all. They just use them as these multitimbral instruments. So let me explain what I mean. Back to discussion. Ugh. Okay. First, multitimbral. What is a multitimbral instrument? A multitimbral instrument means that essentially, let's just boil it down to really simple terms for people who have no idea what's going on with hardware electronic music. When you hear the term multitimbral, basically it means that you can have two different instruments playing at the same time from the same instrument, and they can receive unique input. So you could have two keyboards if you wanted, playing two different sounds at the same time. You could do some crazy stuff if you're an octopus, right? That's what a multitimbral instrument does. The Digitakt and the Digitone 2 are 16-part multitimbral instruments. That means that every single voice on these machines can be used separately from a separate MIDI channel, and you can control these, like you could have 16 different MIDI keyboards plugged into your Digitone, and each one could play one note at a time. You could get 16 people and you could do some dumb TikTok stuff. And that's what these instruments can do. So that being said, when you pair this with a interesting sequencer like an Oxy Mark II or an not Elektron, but maybe like what's the Scorp one? Hapax. Pair it with a Hapax. You pair it with a Torso. There's some other stuff. You could use a Deluge sequencer. There's so many different sequencers that you could use that take advantage of MIDI channels. They have great MIDI output, and some of them have some sort of improvisational tool in them, like pattern generators, like the Polyend Play, or even just highlighting a section. A lot of Polyend stuff has a lot of generative stuff where it can generate patterns for you very quickly. The Polyend Tracker can do it really well too. M8 Tracker can do it too. The Elektron stuff does not have any of that. It does not generate patterns for you other than the Euclidean sequencer, which you'll find on Digitakt and Digitone and Rhythm. And Syntakt? Am I spacing out if Syntakt has it? Anyway. Does it? It does, right? I haven't played on it in so long. I'm spacing out. Anyway, the Euclidean sequencers and the Elektron boxes offer a generative experience similar to a Torso, but not the same as the Oxy and not the same as a Hapax or any of the other ones I just mentioned. When you plug those in, the global mutes are the only ones that really matter versus the pattern mutes, because you're just going to be taking tracks in and out manually anyway, and you're probably only using a couple of the tracks anyhow, and you maybe only need one Elektron box for this workflow, but you're going to use the global mutes, and you're not even writing patterns. And your idea is just to generate patterns and send them over to the machine, and then you bring the global mutes in and out. And so then you're just tweaking the knobs with the parameters on the Elektron box. And that's a lot of the workflow that's really popular today. In fact, I'd say that's pretty meta of the hardware electronic workflow, is to take a multitimbral instrument and then grab a really good sequencer that offers generative pattern generation. That's what I mean, not generative patterns, but also generative patterns, but pattern generation, and control a multitimbral instrument. And then global mutes are your bread and butter, because that's just, it doesn't matter. It's pattern mutes, global mutes, they're the same mutes to you, because you're not actually programming anything on the Elektron box. If you want to program stuff on the Elektron box and you want to do live improv on the Elektron box, and you want to do a similar workflow to what the Oxy is doing, that's going to be really hard on Elektron. That's not what Elektron offers. Elektron is a parameter locking experience, but you can do it. You can throw down trigs, and just throw down trigs and play, and that will do it. You just dial in your sound good and throw down some trigs. Of course, you don't have your parameter locking, but you can do that. And you can totally improv that way too. You could use the Euclidean sequencers and improv a melody or improv some cool stuff. Where I have videos on how to do Euclidean melodic stuff. You can check that out on the channel. And you can do all sorts of improv stuff with Euclidean sequencers, or you can, yeah, that's pretty much it, honestly. As far as like improving the actual sounds that are like the triggering of the sounds, they're going to be done by you just hitting buttons and hitting, like filling in the 16 steps that you have available on your sequencers. That doesn't bode well with people who like to start with 0 and just go into a live show with nothing. That's more of a Oxy Mark II type scenario, or Poly and Play, or whatever MIDI sequencer generative thing that you've got that can kind of just go, you just kind of go like, I want to play in Dorian, A Dorian. Okay, so I'm gonna play an A minor scale. I want it to be 7 steps long, and I want it to have 3 steps be actual note data. Input, bam, it just spits out those values into the sequencer with random notes on random steps, and then you program 4 on the floor, and you throw in 3, 5, 7, 11, 15 on your hats, and you throw on 5 and 13 on your clap, and then whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is the experience you're going to go through. You're going to pop, 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 pop. You're going to be doing a lot of the same patterns over and over again, a lot of the same stuff, but you throw a couple other tricks in there here and there. Turn up the probability or reduce the probability here and there, and start generating a pattern quickly, and then you go into your system and start tweaking knobs. That's the experience of the multi-timbral external sequencer for fully improv, and that's considered fully improv, I would say. And that's about as improv as it's going to get anyway, because any more improv than that, you're just writing a song live. And that's like, I mean, that's kind of improv. I mean, that is improv, of course. That is improv. That's not kind of improv. But like, that's going to be often kind of atrocious. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what note you're going to go to, or like, what's your goal? What's your plan? Do you know what you want to do entirely? If you're going to have it just like start from scratch entirely in the Elektron realm, exclusively in Elektron at a live show, people are probably in for a long one, and it's going to be tough for everybody, most likely, unless you've got some crazy thing where you've got it so dialed in, you know exactly what you're going to do in program. There are some tricks. I do have some tricks, actually, on that note. So maybe I'm being too harsh on that workflow entirely, but there are some tricks, because if you do go into step record, not step record jump, you could do both, either step record jump. So if you go into step record mode, where it says step record here, I know this is hard to see, but if you're in step record mode and you go into your keyboard and you lock your keyboard down and you set your keyboard to a scale, Ionian major, the most wonderful scale ever. If you set your to a scale, every time you hit a note, it's going to program those notes into your sequencer, bop, 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 bop. And if you have it set to step record jump, it'll jump to notes based on the jump value that you have, or the length of your trig that you set in your trig menu. So if you do 3 and you're doing live improv techno, technically, you could totally do kind of a hat packs workflow. In fact, this is a good idea. This is kind of just coming to me right now, actually. This actually would be a really good thing to explore. We should explore this. All right. Yeah, we should definitely explore that. Not today, but we should explore this. But we could, generate a sequence just by kind of randomly hitting notes in our scale, and they'll fit in the scale, and they'll jump odd amounts, so it will sound very techno, I guess would be a good way to put it. It'll just sound cool because it won't be every single note on a 16th note value. And we can set the scale to a polymetric scale, like we'll put it in 7 and try and have it go with everything else that's going at 8, or everything else that's going at 16, and then it will sound very musical and very intentional, and it will sound good. So there is workflows for the global thing, and I think that one that I just discussed might be the most ideal one, actually. I hadn't let my brain go to that space yet until just now. And I guess there's some wiggle room, and we could get a little bit deeper, which is cool. I'm trying to find out why my left channel just got so much quieter. Oh, there we go. I did it. Fixed. Jeez. Don't forget this, folks. If you're really into the Octatrack, reload your parts. Save your parts, reload your parts. Save your parts, reload your parts. You ever don't know what's going on? Reload your parts. That's what I just did. This fixed my problem. I don't even know what I did. I must have somehow bumped the panning or an LFO depth. Honestly, I don't know. And I hope, actually, let's check something really quick. Internal, external. Oh, wait, no. Oh, I have it set to map track. I don't even want it set to map track. I want it set to... No, map track is good. CC in, I don't want right now. Internal. Let's just keep it that way. If you're ever feeling like, what's going on with my Octatrack, and you're sending MIDI to it, and you have other devices connected to your Octatrack, I recommend you go into your project settings, go to MIDI, go to control, turn off your audio CC ins, and turn off your audio C, or set your audio CC to internal only, and that will probably solve whatever weirdness you got going on, because this has a CC message. It goes out MIDI to a MIDI channel, and it will interact with stuff. It'll interact with your Digitone and do weird stuff. This like changes the algorithm on your FM tone engine by default, which is super bizarre and very annoying, mind you. Anyway, just remember that stuff. Okay. Well, let's take a step back here. And I think the last thing that I wanted to mention is something that I'm working on now implementing into my workflow. And that is a fill track. This is something I thought about, like I've done before in my other Elektron boxes, like before I had 16 tracks. That's what I mean to say. Something I've done before I had 16 tracks was having a fill track. And so track 15 for me is going to be my fill track. So these ones will have like this will have unique sounds that I probably will, do whatever they do on both kits. And I'm going to take another sound from kit 2. I'm like sacrificing tracks from kits to do specific actions. Like this is the sidechain kit, so it's just always set to be a sidechain. Now this is going to be a fill track, and this will be a fill track, and so I'll have all of these tracks to play with in improv during my semi-improv workflow. Now a fill track to me looks like something like this. I've got this little drum pattern here. Let's just mute all this so that we can not hear anything else. Oh, I'd really like it if it played some sounds. What's the probability set to 0? It's pretty bizarre. Oh, I wonder if it's been taken out of the audio routing? No, it hasn't. See if it's been sidechained. It has. And why is that in the sidechain? Doesn't matter. There's no sidechain track there. Well, only God knows. And I'm not even sure he exists. So that means that maybe nobody knows. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at, besides that I've somehow muted it without knowing or understanding how I've muted it, or have the inclination to dive into whatever would be causing that, considering there's nothing here that would do that. The idea is to have a track that you set up to do this kind of action. Oh, it's because it's set to fill. I'm such a genius. Okay. Everybody, relax. I haven't lost my mind. We're not hearing it because I've already set this up to be a drum fill. I just threw steps down. I haven't even arranged it yet. And what I do to make drum fills is I kind of like, I just play with some like random trigs a little like at first. And I go in, I go into my slice. I go into my slice menu. I take like a drum fill. I put it into a slice machine, and then I go and I manually slice it because the transient detection / whatever. Anyway, you'd still have to do it manually, regardless to how well the transient detection works. I go in and I slice up a drum fill, like a real drum fill, not like make one up. I slice one, and then I rearrange that drum fill on a track. This is what I do on my M8 tracker. It's how I do all sorts of drum fills on here. Let's see. Oh, we're gonna have to wait another couple of bars. Hang on. This is the best expression or the best example I can give you. Oh, right, my sequencer's not running. Okay, so it's the exact same workflow that I would do on the M8 tracker. The M8 tracker slices very well, just as good as the Digitakt 2 does. It has awesome transient detection, so it will detect, like if you give it slice amounts, it does a pretty decent job of auto slicing. Very, very comfortable to slice on, stereo sampling, stereo slicing. It's great. And I actually created the workflow on the M8 tracker. I honestly find it to be extremely fast to do this process, faster than the Digitakt because it auditions stuff so quickly. And you can just highlight little segments very quickly. And the M8 tracker is just extremely fast tool to make music on versus these machines. They're a little bit slower. They're very fast too. I feel like I'm very fast with these machines, but this thing is just like, you literally, if you grew up playing video games, and I did, I remember my mother used to let me rent a Nintendo from the video store down the street. And I loved it. I loved it. And me and my brother would play. So anyway, I'm very familiar with this thing, so it's very quick. But I took that idea, I took this slicing workflow and applied it here. And I haven't done it. We haven't added it to the song yet. Like I said, this is a new song. I just wanted to demonstrate this. And I actually cut this up just to show you this because I'm not actually at the fill track part of my production. This is kind of at a little bit for me, it's at the end of writing a pattern. I write the pattern and then I go in and I add drum fills after the fact. I don't like add drum fills in the middle of writing a pattern because it's a time consuming thing and it has to hit the right spots and the right feeling. So it's the last thing you do. I'm very far from this stage, so it's not ready, but I do believe the example expresses itself well enough here. So I slice up a drum fill, I put it here, I set it to fill. Somebody said it in the chat, Arif, thank you. I didn't see it in time. You probably would have saved me a couple of minutes of embarrassing myself. But that's what I set it up to do. And then you set, and this is actually thought about this yesterday. As I was getting this ready for the stream today, because I intended on doing this yesterday, which is great. Is that when you put a trigger down, so let's think about this. I think Elektron thought of this. I do, because I wondered this. When you go to your trig condition and you select fill and you turn it on, the first fill you get is don't play. Fill don't play. And I was like, why would that be the first condition when the first condition has always been fill? But why would that be the first condition anyway? Why would you use fill don't play as your first, the fastest thing you can get to? What do I need to do? I need fill don't play? Homie don't play that, right? Fill don't play, homie don't play. Didn't make sense to me until I thought a little further on it. And I realized that you're not going to do that many fill conditions, but you might do a ton of don't fill conditions where your fills are going to play because of how many tracks you would have to do don't fill to have a fill drop stuff out and go doom doom doom. If you wanted to have a drop, you might go don't fill on a ton of triggers because you might have 16 hi-hats there and you need all 16 of them to have don't fill, right? And maybe you don't want to copy and paste your hat because maybe each hat has its own little distinct sound. So you need to quickly go with your don't fill. So there's all sorts of reasons why don't, I mean, that's what came to me. I was like, that has to be the, I mean, it's the only good reason. Every other reason I couldn't think of. But it was the only good reason for don't fill to be the first one. So you create a fill track, and fortunately, don't fill is the first one. So you create a fill track, and this fill track can be however the length of your track is. You hold page, triggers your fill track, and then you go in and you choose all the sounds that you do not want to be heard during your drum fills, during your transitions from one track to the other, and add don't fill to those triggers. And then your fill will have a very realistic, song intended, good vibe. It will feel really good. It will feel like you know what you're doing. It'll feel like this person at the show has a complete grasp of their machines and their music production. It's really cool. It's just really cool. I know that when people have like dope drum fills at live hardware electronic music shows, everyone is usually impressed because a lot of times at live hardware shows, things are really kind of like, it's very techno oriented for the most part, because that's the most popular thing right now is to do techno at live hardware. And there's not too many drum fills in techno. Sometimes they're just drum builds, and they're mostly just different versions of the exact same thing at just different rhythms and different speeds to create energy, right? Just dynamic drama, essentially. So that was kind of the last piece that I really wanted to talk about with the improv thing. There's more about like how to do like semi-improv, improv, all that kind of stuff. But the rest of it kind of like, it's the same on all those workflows, which is like what sounds to tweak, what parameters are great for live performance to change, like the decay of a hi-hat, for sure. Open hats, closed hats, maybe take an open hat and make it a closed hat, and then you can open it. And that's something you can do at a live show, is take a closed hat and open it with your decay. But you have to have an open hat first to do that with the decays. There's stuff like that. All that stuff is important, and maybe we'll talk about that another time, all the different things you can do on your synthesizer. I love to have a synthesizer in my shows. It's really great to have a sampler just in your shows, because the sampler, can be anything. It's the chameleon of electronic music. It can be literally anything in your studio. It could be anything from the computer, blah, blah, blah. But having a synthesizer, you can actually tweak the actual tonality of a sound, as opposed to tweaking just the options that you get with a sampler, which is very limited in terms of sound sculpting, versus literally going from a sine wave to whatever shapes you can make on here. You can make crazy complex waveforms in the Digitone and most synthesizers. And so I like to have a synthesizer in my shows for that reason. I'd say the last big piece of the puzzle is here. And I use the Octatrack Mark II, and I have spent years and countless hours and tons of iterations creating cool live hardware electronic music performance templates for my Octatrack that turns the Octatrack into, it's a performance sampler. That's what it's called. That's what it does. And I leverage every single track and like most of the effects and most of the kinds of engines in each one of these templates. And I build these cool effects that are like 4 bars long or 2 bars long, and they have built-in like build-ups, as you heard during some of the demonstrations. They have beat repeats and glitchy effects and granular stuff and just straight up filters for me to manually do, and reverbs and delays and blah, 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 blah. I do all that. I like to personally separate my drums into one bus and my melodic stuff into another bus, and then I can build effects for those two types, because effects for drums and effects for melodic stuff are often very different. You don't necessarily want to add a bunch of resonant low-pass filters to stuff that's already really bassy and low-passed, because it's just going to be like, why are you doing this? It doesn't sound good. But it does sound good on your drums. Maybe a high pass would be better here. Low pass, high pass. That's cool. That's something I can do with the crossfader, because it's a macro controller for 2 different buses, and I have 2 different buses, and I can do live resampling for transitions, DJ transition, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. Another option you could do is to just get a dope DJ mixer. You could put a DJ mixer here and run these separately into 2 different channels, and you got the 2 faders, and you can bring your melody out, and you can bring your drums out, and you can have them play at separate times, fade them in different times or whatever. You got 2 different filters, you have performance effects, you have isolators, all sorts of stuff. You probably have a looper if you have one that you like, or you buy a looper and put that on the X. And you might have a compressor in the DJ mixer too, which would be cool. And you can use its compressor or whatever. Still not as good as having a compressor memorized into your patterns, but it's pretty good. So if you just write all your music with the compressor running, then the compressor will always work. That's one thing to think about. A lot of people would say, don't do that. And a lot of people say, do that. and that's something for you to explore. But it has its negatives and positives equally, I'd say. So for me, I like to use this box. I think it's great. You can get them used. You can get my templates for extremely cheap by joining my Patreon, and you can try a zillion different versions and effects and different workflows and ideas on there, which is really cool. Or you can use no performance mixer and just use these machines, or use an analog heat plus effects and chain your Digitakt into your Digitone and your Digitone into your analog heat plus effects, and then use your analog heat plus effects stuff for your performances. And you can get a macro MIDI controller that macros to the filter on the analog heat plus effects, plus it macros over, so the macro goes to the filter, one goes to the reverb, one goes to the delay, and you have all of your effects running at the same time, but you have other mixes all the way turned down, and then you use a macro. And you build your own performance template with something like a Neuzeit drop. And I say that, it's extremely expensive to do that, probably a lot cheaper to do this and a lot faster and easier to do it this way, but it's different, and maybe you already own those things, and then you can apply that to your workflow. But having dynamic performance effects is also really cool and really fun, and there's a ton of devices for it. There's even like the Chaos Replay, which is an interesting box for sure, and I've had a lot of fun with it at shows, and it's really fun. Or all the Korg Chaos boxes. They're really fun for live shows, even as another unit after. Like this could go into that, and you can have another set of effects, or just this could have it, or you could have two of them, two dynamic performance effects boxes, and each unit goes to that, or whatever. There's so many different ideas. I love thinking about it. I love talking about it. I love just shopping for them. Even if I'm not going to buy them, just reading about them is exciting for me. But having something at your end of your chain to give you, a bit of the, am I on nothing now? Oh yeah, it's because I muted everything. To give you a bit of the ability to do just even this, just a high pass filter. And it's like really all you need at the bare minimum for a live performance is a high pass filter. You can get away with this. There we go, just a high pass filter, or even just a high pass with a delay. Cool. That's what it would be like if you just had analog heat plus effects and you didn't want to deal with a macro from a MIDI controller to the device. You could get away with just a high pass filter from it, and you'd get very far. I see people with analog heat Mark 1s, and they're using the analog heat Mark 1 as a pseudo compressor with a high pass filter, and that's all they have for their shows, and it sounds great, and it does a great job. I think it's cool to have all sorts of other cool effects because it's just more fun, and you get to program these effects for different styles and different genres of stuff you're playing. And it's fun to program if you enjoy the Octatrack like I do. The Octatrack is like the dark souls of hardware electronic music, and I happen to love Souls-likes, even if I can rarely ever complete them, except for Elden Ring, which I did complete, thank God. But, that being said, there's lots of different devices for you to choose from. So I think that's kind of the end of this discussion. Those were the particular topics I really wanted to touch on that kind of like, I get asked about a lot, and I wanted to just illuminate all those ideas during a live stream. And also I'm recording this, so I'll try and chop this down into something that's really easy to digest. If you need to, or you feel the need to listen to any of these points again, I will highlight them in a much shorter fashion in a video. And then you can hopefully apply some of these ideas or techniques to your workflow. And now I will say what's up to the chat. That was a long one of me just chatting your ear off about that. I'm gonna go to the beginning of the chat and say what's up. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank everybody for hanging out and chilling with me. It's Tuesday. We do the thing that we do every Tuesday, which is a live stream. And we talk about hardware electronic music. Straight up. Every single time. Eventually here, I'm gonna do some digital stuff or talk about the computer a little bit, because I am a Bitwig lover. I love Bitwig. I've been playing on Bitwig 6 beta a ton. Not I wouldn't say a ton. That's an overstatement. I'm using it mostly to record stuff, but I've been tweaking and diving into some of the new stuff because they added step mode and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm a certified trainer for Bitwig, but I haven't been using it all that much, so I'm getting recertified soon. And I believe for, the launch. So I'm going to sit down and have to take tests on Bitwig again and get back to that place where they're like, you're good enough for us to have your name on the website or whatever. So I do want to get back and talk about that stuff eventually, because all of this for me started with Bitwig, like very, very early Bitwig a long time ago. Well, that's where I really got into like electronic music, was in Bitwig. I mean, I did it before that, but Bitwig is what really opened it up for me. I loved Bitwig. And I still love it. Cheers from Istanbul. What's up? Cheers, Istanbul. Party people. Very interesting, useful subject. Thank you, Dover. Switch back to global mode. Did you? That's interesting. But I get it. I get it. We talked about all these different, but there's so many perks. Yeah. Nate, yeah, that is a TR-1000. I do love the TR-1000. We will, just for the end, as a bonus, we'll pull the camera over to the TR-1000. I don't have any music written in it right now that I would ever want to call music. I've just played with this machine, learning it like I do, because I just like to learn machines like very, very deeply before I do any music making. I need to know everything before I start making music on a device. That's kind of how my brain functions. That's why I do what I do, or why I'm infatuated with this, and why I make tutorials and run this channel where I teach all this stuff, because I'm like infatuated with knowing every little detail of everything about every machine that I pick up. And I'm still in that process with the TR-1000. I've gotten pretty far. I feel like I know it quite well. Somehow my brain memorizes these electronic music machines more than it memorizes anything else in my life. The easiest. It's like stuff sticks in my head and it stays there. I don't know how, but it doesn't with most other things in my life. I forget people's names like 5 seconds after I meet them. Life is like music. It must be composed by ear, feeling, instinct, not by rule. That's a nice quote. I'm not sure by who, but it sounds nice. I wish DN2 had a polyphonic arpeggiator. Yeah. Well, that would be interesting. Polyphonic, the arpeggiator is technically, the voices are polyphonic. But I understand what you mean. I don't know what you'd want to do. Why you'd want that? You want it to arpeggiate chords? That would sound crazy. Great timing, as I'm currently taking Circo's course and thinking a lot about how I want to perform in the future. Well, Circo would 100%, if Circo is here, which he often is because he's one of the moderators here. If he's here, Circo is definitely the dude for the global mute mode. That is his mute. Me and him have debated this plenty of times. As you may have seen, Circo comes on this channel often. We're talking about doing another stream soon. We're just trying to find a topic that I think would be really good for us to discuss for 2 hours. But yeah, people who, if you don't know who Circo is, it's just someone else, whatever, it doesn't matter. Put anybody's face there that you want. Folks who like to do live hardware electronic music using the global mute mode, and when they're not just doing live improv hardware electronic music, are often using their modular synthesizers. And mute modes they're like, that's not often a thing in a modular sequencer, except for the Hermod. There are built-in mutes with the Hermod. And the Hermod kind of functions a lot like Elektron. I have it in the system now, and I like it. I like the NerdSec too. That's probably my all-time favorite is the NerdSec. But I like the Hermod Plus a lot. It's got a lot of stuff that's very Elektron, which makes it really easy for me to learn. But yes, that improv workflow, the global mute thing, the generating melodic line and throwing down trigs on patterns that you're kind of familiar with, or you're like, this sounds good with this. Circo's awesome at teaching that. And also that is very common in the modular workflow, not just Elektron stuff with external hardware sequencers or even iPads or whatever. There's some cool stuff on iPad. Not that I'm not a fan of that experience myself, but it's cool. Did he mean not to go for so much melody, but rather groove? I missed it, but I really want to know. No, I meant melody. I meant don't go for so much melody. September have it. I think I said that right. No, I don't mean groove. go for groove, go for tons of groove, go for less melody. And that's because you can't just put tons of melody. This is something that was like during like, I don't know how many people have gone to like 101 music theory. During 101 music theory, so one of the things that you'll do is you'll learn 4-part harmony. And there's all sorts of rules, right? There's lots of rules. But there's some stuff that like you can ignore some of the rules if you were just like 4-part harmony is interesting. It teaches you a lot about melody and how to arrange melodies. But anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is you don't want to have a ton of notes stacked on top of each other because they kind of it just becomes mush. It's just too much, too many tones, too many frequencies, too many harmonics. It's just overwhelming. So you don't want tons of melodic lines. You don't want to have like this ascending melodic line and this, or ascending melodic line, I meant to do that, and then descending melodic line, all at the same time, plus a chord progression, plus a bass line that's doing an arpeggiator, plus you're doing live improv. It's like insane stuff. It doesn't sound good. It's fun for you. I'd say as a listener, you're just like, what is going on? This guy's just mashing everything at the same time. So I feel like the melodic stuff, pull it back in general. Just keep it, really tasteful. The drums go ham. That's all about dealing with the spectrum. Like you can have little ear candy. You can have tons of that stuff. You can have a million triggers with ear candy on it and you get away with that. I switched to a Digitakt from a Korg ESX1 and KeyStep Pro about a year ago, and my workflow ability to write and compose have changed forever. Now there's a Digitone coming, also infatuated. Absolutely. I've just fallen deeper and deeper in love with the Digitone 2 every day. I'm like, I don't know what happened. I just like broke through. Oh, Circo is in the chat. What's up, dude? I broke through I don't know what I broke through. I don't know what, I guess there was some sort of wall I wasn't aware of, but I broke through it, and now I'm like really, really just so in love with this machine more than any other synthesizer I've ever owned. And I love my synths, dude. I've like my Prophet 5. I love my Prophet 5. It's like my grand piano in my studio. And then I've had it for forever, since the reintroduction to it or whatever, the Rev 4. And then I have the Melbourne Delia, and I love that synth. It sounds so good. I love it so much. It's so beautiful and so fun. The knob's smooth. Awesome analog ladder filters. It's the only thing I have that's polyphonic with ladder filters. So sick. I love it. Digitone 2 is still my favorite. But I love those synths. But Digitone 2 is my favorite because it gets crazy. And it has the Elektron sequencer. That is the superpower. This actually brings me to another point with the Tonewerk, which I don't want to talk about now because I want to like really go deep on it. But I did discover some really cool stuff with the Tonewerk in terms of sequencer, MIDI Elektron sequencer plus polyphonic stuff that's not in the Tonewerk, external stuff. It is very sick and is the only Elektron box that works in this fashion. Anyway, I'll just leave some hype with it because it's super sick. All on MIDI foot switches. One switch sets all global mutes off so I can instantly get back to the muted pattern as intended effectively and instantly. Mark Beyer. That's the name of the person. That's what I meant to say. That's cool. That's a cool workflow. I've been talking to a lot of people. Was it today they released the Morningstar MIDI pedal 2.0? As you can see, I'm like always watching gear, everything 24/7. I'm a freak. Those Morningstar pedals, as far as MIDI pedals go to controlling stuff, are always my recommendation to people when they want to use the Octatrax pickup machines, because you either want you want to control the Octatrax pickup machines with a MIDI pedal. You want to use your feet. That's kind of the advantage of them, honestly. So you can do something else. Play through Octatrack. So a good MIDI pedal is the Morningstar ones. They're very good. There's lots of good ones, but the Morningstar are the ones that I have found to be very effective, and they have all the things you need. You have to have MIDI notes. It has to be able to send actual notes out of a pedal for it to be the most effective with Elektron stuff for sending tricks to certain things like recorders and stuff like that, especially on the Octatrack. And you want a 3-button to 5-button ideally, so that you can move up and down and select tracks, and then the other 3 to start and stop and start recording for your pickup machines. Anyway, check those pedals out. That's a cool idea. Thanks, Mark Byer, for bringing that up. A veteran emo kid as well. I bet so many of the people on this channel, watching this channel, are. Given the new Elektron releases over the last few years, do you have a new favorite device, or is the OT still the king for you? The OT is not the king for me. The OT is my favorite utility box that I own. I have two of them. I also have two Digitakts and two Digitones, but I have only a Digitakt 1 and Digitone 1, and then a Digitakt 2 and a Digitone 2. But I have two Octatracks because they are the most useful Elektron box that I own. They can do so much. And one of them has a battery in it, and I can walk around the house and sample stuff if I want, which I don't do, but I could do. It's just whatever, just a cool thing to do, I guess. But I would say my favorite Elektron box, well, it's often a toss-up between the Digitakt 2 and the Digitone 2. But I'd have to go with the Digitakt 2 as my all-time favorite Elektron box. And before the Digitakt 2, it was the Digitakt as my all-time favorite. Just a hair above my Octatrack. And that's because I have so much fun with pattern mutes. Literally the discussion that we had during this whole stream for that hour that I just nonstop spewed my thoughts at you is why I love the Digitakt more than the Octatrack. And only a little bit more. And that's because I like to write my music on my Digitakt more than I like to write my music on my Octatrack. And once Digitakt 2 came out, it had stereo sampling, and then they added slicing, of course, and actual sidechain from a compressor that is actually useful, unlike the Digitakt sidechain, which is a total waste, only good for resampling, honestly. But works great on the Digitakt because you can remove tracks from the sidechain compressor on the Digitakt too. All that stuff is it's so good it's just so good for electronic music. It's got all the little boxes I need checked to compete with making music on my computer. So, yes, I would say that's my favorite. And you're referring to new Elektron releases. I guess you said Octatrack and then new Elektron releases. We got a ton of new. We got Tonewerk, Syntakt, Model Cycles, Model Samples, Digitakt 2, Digitone 2. I mean, even Digitakt 1 and Digitone 1 and Analog E plus Effects are all post-Octatrack. And I think the Analog 4 and Rhythm are even post-Octatrack, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. I love my Octatrack more than everything, except for the Digitakt 2. Just because I make the most music on it. I'd like to know why track 16 on my Digitone 2 and Overbridge doesn't show up in Ableton Live as a track. Somebody already answered that question. It's the Ableton limitation. It is an Ableton limitation. It does not exist. It's not a limitation in Bitwig, but it is the limitation in Ableton. And I do also like Ableton. I have a push 3, and I've tried to get into it. I struggle to get into it. Bitwig just makes more sense to me. Hey Matt, for those who don't have an Octatrack, would you recommend creating macros on Digi boxes? Yeah. Well, there's not macros on the Digi boxes. You can't. Yes, you can, because you can use velocity. Velocity would be one that you could actually send. Yes, you could, because there's mod wheel. Why did I say there's not macros? I was like, sorry, brain fart. Tons of macro. Yeah, go ahead. Great idea. That's a good idea. You could totally create macros and control your analog key plus effects. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Good thinking. That's a great idea. I'm not going to do it because I love my Octatrack. But for those of you who don't have an Octatrack, that is actually stellar. Stellar idea. Mike Damone. That's a clap for you, my friend. How do you manage the destructive element of pattern mutes? Do you never go backwards in patterns, or do you just have to remember to reload from the project if you do? That's right, I never go backwards in patterns, Mark. That's exactly right. I don't go back. I just go forward. If I'm writing a song where, I mean, this is a good question because this lands in this singer-song. You sound to me like a singer-songwriter type. If this is a thought you're even having, because when you are when you're writing a song, there's a pattern to the song, not just a pattern to what's happening in the song. There's a pattern to the elements of the song. There's the intro, the bridge, the chorus, the verse, and a lot of times it's like intro, verse, chorus, verse, verse, or intro, verse, pre-chorus, verse, actual chorus, verse, chorus, bigger chorus, outro, right? This is like a really common like rock scenario, or just songwriter scenario where you have this A, B, A, B, C, A, B type thing or whatever. And in that method, you go back and forth, back and forth. In arranger mode, you would go pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 1, pattern 2, because you could just use the kit. You're really just using the kits from the patterns. You're kind of programming what is muted, what's unmuted in the arranger. But in the way that I do it, I want to perform it. And I know what you just mentioned is a limitation. And it's not a limitation in global mutes. It's a limitation in pattern mutes, specifically what you've described. So that is a negative check for pattern mutes, but I'm not going to go backwards anyway. What I'm going to do is copy the pattern and paste the pattern, post that pattern. If it's meant to go back, I would take the version behind it and paste it forward, knowing I intend to go back to something that sounds like pattern 1, but it's actually pattern 3. And it would have some different changes and stuff like that. I'm not going to do the exact same thing from pattern 1 on pattern 3, to answer your question. Syntax does have Euclidean. Thank you, Herbie. I should have just looked at the chat because I knew that would get answered like 2 seconds. ToneVerk, of course it has Euclidean. ToneVerk needs Euclidean. ToneVerk needs a lot of things. And time stretching. ToneVerk needs a lot of things. Roland sits next to Elektron. And ToneVerk's going to get the things that it needs. I'm not being... what would they call that? I actually... believe that's a fact. People say like don't buy an instrument or don't buy anything for something that it's going to become, right? I've heard somebody said that in one of I do these weekly meetings, and that was said there. But I've heard it countless times throughout my life, especially with hardware. It's a really common sentiment. You don't buy something for what the firmware might have later. However, there's a little gotcha to that statement in the Elektron world, is that I've been using Elektron gear forever. Been using this gear for a long time, and I've seen a million updates come to these devices, and I am certain that they're going to add the things that need to be added to the ToneVerk to get it to do the things I expect it to do. I am not certain that they're going to add everything that I want them to add. I don't know if they'll add pattern mutes, which would be extremely disappointing. So if Elektron is listening, and you don't add pattern mutes, I will be extremely disappointed. And that will be hard for me. And that will make me not use the device as much, personally. Because like I said, this is my workflow, and I've explained my whole workflow to you. I'm not going to use devices that don't have that ability, and I'm not going to sequence the ToneVerk from another box. I hate that idea. That irritates me to even think about. But I do think they're going to add a lot of the other things that we need and that we expect. And whatever issues that we're dealing with will get solved. I do believe that. The Roland sits next to Elektron. Yes, I have to learn a lot of nice performance workflow for bigger sets. The Roland is super sick. Okay. Check it. Check it, B. Camera's pulling itself away. This is Mr. Rolando, and that's my mouse. And that's a Stream Deck to control OBS. Do I have anything? I think I'm in the default stuff, so it just sounds like this. Let's just go to the next pattern. Actually, let's go to pattern select. I mean, I don't want to make music like that on this thing. Let's go to a different pattern. This thing for me is about techno. Yeah. There we go. I mean, it sounds awesome. I don't know if any of these are assigned to anything. Oh, they are. Cool. So check this out. One of my issues with this machine... Gotta get a little out of the camera here. One of my issues with this machine... I have a lot of issues with the TR-1000. I haven't made it all the way through the chat, but we're talking about the TR-1000 now. I have a lot of internal battles with the TR-1000. I have an idea of how I would use this machine. There's a whole bunch of little stuff this thing needs solved. For a lot of people. A lot. one of them is MIDI sync. It's absolute trash. However, if it's sending MIDI sync, it's good. You can resolve some of your MIDI sync issues from external stuff to the TR-1000 by setting your patterns to sync gen or something, or gen track. Anyway, is it here? Let's see if I can remember where it is. Is it in the kits? Or is it in the project? Yeah. I think it's here. Is it? Track sync. Layered gens. That's what it is. I know you can't see that. I apologize. But if you set it to layered gens for your track sync, this is somebody taught me this in my Discord. It resolves some of your MIDI sync issues. Anyway, doesn't fix everything. It doesn't fix all the issues. Pisses me off. Yes. I don't want to write anything. I don't care. However, there's a ton that I absolutely love about this machine. I don't regret buying it. It was a lot of money. A lot of money for it not to work with my Elektron gear. That is very upsetting. And I could see why a lot of people would be pissed about that. A lot. Including myself. Will Roland fix it? I'm assuming they will. Or they're going to tarnish their name, because Elektron is by far the most popular hardware electronic music company there is. I don't care what anybody says. I see more Elektron boxes, and it's not because I host shows, and I do host shows, but whatever. It's not because of the live hardware shows that Modbang hosts, but it's just because they are the most popular hardware electronic music devices. Hands down. I see them in everybody has an Elektron box at a show. Sometimes people don't, but for the most part, I'd say 70% of the show, somebody's got one piece of Elektron equipment in there. And it's probably the clock master. It's probably doing drums or something. Anyway, it needs to sync. These guys need to play together. If this can't play with this is going to have a really hard time being cool to a lot of people, because people who like this, and this has parameter locking, all sorts of cool stuff. I think the workflow on the TR-1000 is like this mentally. This is what I think. And I have some ideas on the ultimate workflow. I think the Toneverk is actually the best companion that I have in my studio. If I had one companion to pair with the TR-1000, it's actually the Toneverk. And that's because the Toneverk can route some of its tracks out to the TR-1000, which I can use the sidechain and effects from here on the stuff from the routed out Toneverk stuff. And then this can actually route back into the Toneverk and then go into a separate channel. No feedback loop at all happening in there because of the way Toneverk is able to route audio and tracks. And then I can have a separate amount of tracks that go out to the main outs that are not routed into the TR-1000, but I can get my sidechain ducking from the TR-1000. And that's super sick. Great workflow. I think the workflow on the TR-1000, excluding talking about Toneverk here, but the workflow on the TR-1000 is like this. You get a really dope kit. You build a really, really, really dope kit. One where it doesn't even matter what you have programmed. It's so good that you can just throw triggers down. Whether it's A triggers or B triggers, it doesn't matter. You can throw trigs down and they just sound good because you've got dope rolling sounds. 808, 909, analog, the real deal, plus layered stuff, whatever you want to do. So many sounds, unlimited sounds. 32 gigabytes or something of free SD storage in this thing, 14 gigs or something of samples in this thing already, plus tons of machines that have actual parameters and synthesis going on. I mean, it's crazy how many sounds we have in this machine. However, there are weird little pitfalls, like changing patterns with different kits. There's silence in between. It's totally noticeable. It's on the global side of things. That's weird. The MIDI sync thing is a little weird. It is weird. It sucks. It doesn't let you save kits and reload kits from like a global bank of kits, like a preset thing of kits. But I learned a workaround. Thank you to Travarsi for sharing this information with someone I work with, Zendir. And Zendir shared this information with me, and I will share it with you. And this is so good. This is such good information, so useful. I was so happy when Zendir shared this with me. You can take a USB stick, plug it in the back, and then you can take the kits and export them to the USB stick and save all the kits from the preset pattern thing, because it has a million great kits, and you can actually just export the kits and remove the patterns. You don't need the patterns, but you want all those 909 kits, those 808 kits, and all these other cool kits that were built by these great sound designers, these great performers, these great music producers on the TR-1000. You can export the kits over, and then you can take the kits and import them into your projects. But you need a USB stick, so it doesn't let you do it from internally. It's got to go out and then in. It's a little bit of a process, but I think it's totally worth it, and I'm definitely going to do it, and it will completely change the game for me, because it'll speed up how quickly I can make music on this machine, so I can load the 909 kit and then edit the 909 kit to be a different kit. And I think that's really cool. And that solves a lot of problems. But ultimately, I think you dial in the best sounds you possibly can. Use this for drums mostly. You have flourishes that are melodic if you want to use this as a groove box, but mostly you're sticking to house and techno, I think, is where this really shines. That's what I think about the TR-1000. Back here, so I'm not all junctified. Perhaps that's why they call you EZBOT. What's up, Moonbase Alpha? Been recreating your effects off your tutorials. Now I'm going to try plugging a Korg NTS3 into the chain as well. NTS3 sounds awesome. I did the launch video for that device for Korg. That's me in that video. And it's a really great sounding stereo effects processor, and you can build your own effects. You can program your own effects and sell them. There's an SDK for doing all that stuff. Really sick. Could sample that and have the EZBOT drum kit. Oh yeah. +1 for last and not last. Great for drum fills in the DT drummer context. 100%. Definitely use that. Can it giant steps? Improv man? Can it giants? What's up, Pineapple Galaxy? Good to see you. I don't know what that means, giant steps, improv man, but I'm glad you're here. Syntakt update with the MIDI mappable pattern changes was hugely let down when I found out, like on the mono machine or machine drum, feels like improv when you can switch patterns for each machine on the fly. Yeah. Tron MIDI cables? That's such a great... That's such a cool comparison or analogy or whatever. No, these are my MIDI cables. I designed these. They use passive electricity because there's 5 pins in a MIDI cable, and only 3 of them get used for MIDI, and 2 of them, one's a ground and one actually sends power. Anyway, it's a pain in the ass to actually describe how it actually works. Anyway, it's dope. You can get them at modbang.com. Lots of more colors to come, and the black version of the cable will be coming soon. But I'm glad you asked. I always need to do commercial for them because I have a ton of them and I need you to buy them so that I can get some of my money back from the government, because they tariff everything so hard and it's really hard to make anything in the United States. I always wanted a DN2, what Arturia brought to the Keystep Mark II. Keystep Mark II, I have not gotten to play with yet. The one knob tweaking deal, interesting idea. They added a lot of cool stuff to it. I would like one. I will pick up the black one when it comes out. Likely only from Guitar Center, because that's what Arturia does with Guitar Center. Last is also a hack to make because fill can't be activated by MIDI. 2 identical patterns next to each other. One or PC way to trigger the last notes and then program change back to where you were the last minute. Oh, that's a cool idea. Give us some double crossfader action. You can do that with the noise side drop double crossfader action, because there is a CC for the crossfader. TR-1000 also has MIDI instead of auto. Yes, I did do that. It didn't make it better. It's still so off that it's unusable. Sigh, the MIDI sync issues, yeah. Such a shame. And I don't mean to bring a piece of gear on this on the channel ever and slam it by any means. I paid for the TR-1000 out of my money, and I'm not a hater of it. I just, like I said, I think it's sick, and I assume that those will be solved. I think that they weren't apparently aware or something. That I'm hoping, when it was launched that it was having these sync issues, and it will be solved. And when that's solved, it's golden. I mean, the thing is so cool. The app for it is awesome. The drivers for the computer and controlling it and all that stuff is so good. It really is very good. I have no relationship with Roland at all. I do want one with you, Roland. But I don't have one with you. We're celibate, I guess. Would an OG Digitone be a good add to my Digitakt OG? Or a synth would be a better option? Personally, I would say get a synth. Oh, good add to your Digitakt? Yeah. Yeah. It's a synth. 8-voice, 4-track, multi-timbral FM synth with filters. And some great stuff. Absolutely. Killer add. Digitone 2 is a much better machine by a lot. By like a huge amount. It's like finding a piece of legendary equipment versus starting out with your like uncommons or whatever. It's a big deal. It's endgame stuff. It's badass. I make a lot of video game analogies because I grew up playing a lot of video games. Also, how many of you fools are playing Arc Raiders right now? I feel like there's a lot of people playing Arc Raiders. It's pretty fun. Not gonna lie. Enjoying it quite a bit. Well, I think that's the end of the chat, and that is, I mean, at the end of the chat feed. We've been doing this for an hour and 46 minutes. It's been strictly conversation, and that's good. That means I had a lot to talk about, I had a lot to say, and I did. I had a double espresso, gave me just enough energy to get through this, and I think we've gotten to the end. I have not heard from LaCroix, the Realist Wizard, again with some of the best questions. LaCroix has forsaken me, as they always have. They do not care about me or this channel. It's extremely un-American of them to not support me. They are an American company, despite their name sounding like they're French or something. Well, that's going to be it. My name's Matthew, aka EZBOT. If you like these kind of streams, visit patreon.com/EZBOT and sign up to be a Patreon. You can do the free tier, which won't support me in any way, but it will be cool just to have you there, and you'll see the stuff that I post. But you can sign up for a paid tier, and there's tons of rewards on there. I have some patches that I make for Digitone, stuff that I make for the Digitakt, tons of Octatrack performance templates if you're interested in that and you have an Octatrack, sample packs, stuff like that I've made. Not too many of those, but they do exist, and I do have them on there. All sorts of different tiers of cool things I do. I do weekly meetups with people where we discuss stuff and share music and just talk about performance techniques, or like do showcases of gear and discuss things in a group setting. And then I have a private lessons tier where you can meet with me every month, once a month or twice a month at another tier. Plus I do private lessons if you want to get private lessons from me on Elektron gear or M8 Tracker or even TR1000, I think. By next week, I think I'd say I'm at a place where I could do private lessons on that. Yeah, EZBOT.live is a good place for that. Other place you can get performance templates are coffee.com. If you want to get the cool MIDI cables or any of my other cables, all the cables that you've seen, other than the red balance cables, because I don't have long enough ones in my own store to use them in my studio. But other than those red ones, are available at modbang.com, including all the cool patch cables that I designed. I designed these cables. They're not like just some random cable. I designed them. And I chose their length and the shape and what they look like. And do they glow in the dark? Or are they clear? Do they light up with an LED? How do you make that work? You know, I had to engineer that process. Anyway, I'm proud of the stuff that I've done, and you can check it out at modbang.com. Other ways to support this channel are literally just to come back and watch it again next time, or leave a nice comment and a like. It goes a really long way. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. It's not like gonna do a bunch of annoying notifications or anything. It's just gonna help my algorithm, I think. Maybe. I don't even know if that's how it works. YouTube is all over the place. But anyway, that's the cool stuff that you can do to support this channel. There's affiliate links if you want to get Digitakt, Digitone, Octatrack, TR1000, all that stuff. It pays the channel handsomely, so if you want to pick that stuff up and also support me at the same time, you can do that. It won't charge you extra or anything. In fact, the place you get it from has got some of the fastest shipping I've seen, and they often have all the stuff in stock, which is really sick. So check those out. They're in the description. Otherwise, thank you everybody for hanging out. We do this every Tuesday. Sometimes we do it on Fridays. My intention is to do a Friday one again, I believe. That's my goal. Maybe it's next Friday that I'm doing it. I don't know. My intention is to do it on Friday. I want to do it twice a week. That's what I really want to do. So if you want to be a part of these streams, come back every Tuesday for sure. Around this time, between 12 and 1, we start. We do it for about 2 hours. Hang out, ask questions, presentation, music production, cool stuff. We do it all live. Nothing hidden, everything transparent. No BS. It is what it is, exactly the way you see it. That's how it happens on this show every Tuesday. My name's Matthew, aka EZBOT. I'll see y'all next time.